Welcome back, everyone. My name is Steele, and I'm glad to present to you my own creation. Please like, share, and subscribe. It would help a small writer keep her dream alive. I want to give a thank you to my Shay, who always lights my way. Thank you. It's looking like Anarchy by Steele. Chapter 13. Something from Nothing. The trees pressed in around us as we moved, brittle branches snapping under our feet. Our breaths hung in the morning air, white and quick. The sun had barely cleared the horizon, and even that weak light couldn't cut through the chill. Layla leaned on Geneva and me as we walked, her steps dragging. Every few minutes she'd stop to cough, each one sounding worse than the last. It made my chest tighten. From worry and from fear, we were already too late. Kaori was in front, map folded under one arm, scanning the woods for signs of life. Marcus kept to the rear, one hand on the piece of rebar he'd been carrying since the camp. No one talked much. The silence between us was heavy, filled with everything we didn't want to say aloud. We were lost. We were vulnerable. We might not all make it. Ricky stumbled and dropped to one knee. "Shit, sorry," he muttered, wiping his nose with a shaking hand. I turned back. "You good?" "Yeah," he said, but he didn't meet my eyes. 5 minutes, I said. Rest for 5. Then we push on. We gathered in a small clearing, half hidden by underbrush. Kaori crouched, taking out the map, and traced our progress in the dirt using a stick. We're heading in the right direction, more or less. If we follow the slope west, we might hit a road or a creek. Something. Geneva glanced up. "How much longer before Layla crashes completely?" "She's already crashing," I said quietly. "We need real shelter. A building. Even a barn." "I saw a water tower for," Marcus said, squinting into the trees. "Lemon Springs or something nearby." "Then we head towards that," Kaori said. "Water towers mean towns, or at least pipes, and pipes mean buildings." We moved again, slower this time. The cold was relentless. My fingers were stiff even in my jacket pockets. Every step took effort. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was hopelessness creeping in like the cold, numbing us. Eventually, we reached a small ridge and paused. Through the trees, we could just barely make out the curve of something man-made. A rusted guardrail. A road. "Thank God," Geneva whispered. But we didn't run for it. Not yet. Everyone knew better by now. Marcus and Kaori slipped forward first, crouched low. The rest of us waited, hidden in the brush. I kept a hand on Layla's shoulder. Her head had slumped forward, but she was still breathing. A few tense minutes passed. Then Kaori waved us forward. We broke the tree line and stepped onto cracked pavement. The road was barely visible under fallen leaves and debris, but it was something. Civilization, or what was left of it. "We follow this south," Kaori said. "There's bound to be something. A farmhouse. A station. Hell, even a storm drain will be better than open woods tonight." "Agreed," I said. We started walking again, footsteps echoing in the stillness. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. Ricky kept glancing back. What if they come looking? The camp? The guards. If they're smart, they're still trying to contain the fire, I said. If they're dumb, they'll come after us. Either way, we stay alert. Kaori added, and if we're real lucky, we're ghosts to them now. We walked until our shadows stretched long across the road and the sun rose high. Still no houses, no smoke, nothing. The wind picked up, cutting through our clothes like knives. Still no shelter, Marcus muttered, voice hoarse. Then we'd camp again, I said, though I hated saying it. We'd find a hollow, cover ourselves the best we can. Geneva nodded grimly. We keep moving, until we can't. Kaori's voice cracked when she spoke. We follow the road another hour. If we don't find something by then, we think about doubling back. I nodded. My lips were too dry to answer. My fingers were numb. My feet were aching with every step. But about 30 minutes in, the woods thinned. And that's when Ricky stopped walking and pointed through the trees. Look, what's that? We all looked. Past the brush and undergrowth, tilted just barely uphill, was a shape. A boxy silhouette with a sagging roofline and broken porch rails. Covered in vines and nearly swallowed by the woods, but unmistakable. A house. Please don't be another trap, Geneva muttered. No smoke, Marcus said. No tire tracks. Looks old. Then we check it, I said. But carefully. We moved slowly. Kaori and Marcus took the lead, creeping up the steps with makeshift weapons in hand. Marcus gripping the rebar like a bat. His bald head was glistening with sweat in the cold air. The front door creaked open. No gunshots, no movement inside. Still, we waited, holding our breath as they disappeared into the dark interior. Then, "Clear!" Kaori called. We rushed in. The air smelled like stale mold and old wood, thick with dust. But it was dry. No broken windows, no signs of recent life. Just long-abandoned furniture. A couch sunken in on one side, a dusty dining table, shelves still cluttered with forgotten knickknacks. Someone lived here a long time ago, Geneva said, stepping around a broken chair. There's an old fireplace, Ricky added, kneeling by the cold, empty hearth. Think we could get a fire going? We'll try, I said. But first, Layla. We cleared a spot on the couch, and I eased her down onto it, wrapping her in my coat and part of an old blanket we found in a hall closet. Her breathing was shallow. She stirred a little, eyes fluttering open, then shut again. She needs heat, fluids, and rest, Geneva said. We've got 2 out of 3. I'll check the kitchen, Marcus said, already walking away. I looked around the living room. The walls were faded yellow, peeling at the corners. Pictures still hung in crooked frames. A family once. A little boy and girl are standing in front of a pickup truck. Their faces are dusty with time. We weren't supposed to be here. But right now, it felt like the house had waited for someone. Anyone. By some miracle, Marcus came back holding a few dented cans. Beans, peaches, nothing good. But it's calories. We boil the water from the bathroom, Geneva said. Better than nothing. Kaori got a fire going. It was small, smoky, and slow to start. But when the flames finally caught, they cast the room in a soft orange glow. We huddled close. Layla's cheeks started to lose their greyish tint. We didn't talk much that afternoon. Just sat in the quiet hum of warmth and momentary peace, staring into the flames like they might show us a future. Eventually, I pulled the map back out and unfolded it across the table. Kaori joined me, her expression grim. "We'll have to move again soon," she said. "I know. But not today." I looked back at the others. Ricky dozing near the fireplace, Geneva checking Layla's pulse again, Marcus keeping watch through a crack in the boarded-up window. "No," I said. "Not today." The fire had burned low by the time night settled deep over the house. Outside, the woods creaked and whispered, the cold pressing in again. Everyone else had drifted into uneasy sleep, bundled together on the floor and furniture, worn down by exhaustion and worry. I couldn't sleep. Layla's breathing was still rough, steady for now, but raspy. The fire's faint glow flickered across her face. I kept thinking about how close we'd come to losing her, how close we still were. I reached quietly for my bag and pulled out the solar crank radio. Its edges were scuffed and dirty. The antenna bent slightly from the fight and the fall, but it still worked. I turned the small crank slowly. The soft whir was barely louder than the crackle of dying embers. After a few turns, I clicked it on. Static. I turned the dial, scanning for something, anything. Then, a quiet voice broke through.
"Roadways remain unstable in parts of the Piedmont. Marshal checkpoints reported near Fayetteville and Raleigh."
The signal cut again, then came back.
"Citizens urged to avoid known evacuation zones. Reports of irregular militia activity. Do not engage. Shelter in place if safe to do so."
Another pause. Then a clipped voice, official sounding, maybe military.
"Repeat. Federal relief has been delayed due to ongoing attacks on supply lines. Civilian safety cannot be guaranteed at this time. Use caution. Trust only confirmed communication sources."
I turned it down, heart thudding. Nothing hopeful. No real help is coming. Just more warnings. I sat still for a while, staring at the shadows dancing across the walls. Then I stood, grabbing the radio and a flashlight from my bag, and crept toward the back hallway of the house. The floorboards groaned softly under my feet. I passed an old bathroom, dry, the pipes long since empty, then a small linen closet. I opened it slowly. Bingo. Dusty towels, some ratty bedding, and, pushed to the back, a box with faded labels. I knelt, pulled it out, and opened it carefully. Inside, a yellowing bottle of aspirin, a half-full bottle of cough and cold medicine, a dark, thick green slurry coating the clear bottle. A dusty roll of gauze, a packet of iodine swabs, an old bottle of bug spray, and a small jar labelled chest rub. Old, but intact. I exhaled. It wasn't much, but it was something. Very much something. I tucked it under my arm and moved on, sweeping the flashlight across the floor. A narrow door near the back led into what must have been a child's bedroom. The wallpaper was peeling, cartoon rockets and stars half torn from the plaster. An old dresser stood beneath the window. I opened the drawers, empty mostly. Then I found a thin wool scarf tucked in the back corner, still soft. I brought it with me. By the time I returned to the living room, the fire had almost died. Just faint orange coals nestled in ash. The coal was already creeping back in, biting at my fingers and my spine. I set the medical finds next to Geneva, who stirred but didn't wake. Then I crouched by the hearth and reached for the bundle of wood we'd stacked earlier. I fed a few thin pieces onto the glowing embers, gently blowing until flames flickered back to life. It wasn't much, but it would hold through the night and keep us all warm. Layla coughed again, but softer this time. I pressed the back of my hand to her forehead. Still cool, but not as clammy. I tucked the wool scarf snug around her chest and arms. "Hang in there," I whispered. I sat down beside the fire, legs drawn to my chest, and picked up the radio. The soft crackle of static welcomed me like an old ghost. I turned the dial up slowly.
Civilians advised to remain sheltered. Avoid conflict zones. Rumors of resistance growing in pockets of the southeast. Food shortages in Raleigh. Minimal aid at the last known FEMA site.
The voices faded in and out, sometimes only half there. It was like eavesdropping on a broken world. I lowered the volume until it was just a murmur in the background, like the sound of the wind brushing against pine branches outside. Everyone else was asleep, curled in blankets, jackets, or whatever they had. Faces slack with exhaustion. Bruised by fear and cold, but still breathing. I leaned back against the wall, eyes heavy, but mind too restless to close. I kept the radio close, the fire between me and the dark corners of the house. There were no answers on the airwaves, no promises, but there was noise. And right now, that was enough to remind me we weren't the only ones still alive. So, I stayed up a while longer, listening, waiting. Watching the flames dance, hoping morning would come. Chapter 14. A New Day. The morning light came slowly, filtering through the dusty window panes in quiet slants. It touched the tops of chairs and the edges of counters, softening the rough lines of the house. Everything looked pale and fragile under it, like a dream not yet fully shaken from sleep. No one spoke much. The floor creaked under careful footsteps as we moved through the house, still bundled in layers, still exhausted. We opened cabinets with hesitant hands, checking behind long-forgotten boxes and peeling labels. Every small find, a dented can of beans, a crumpled box of quick rice, was a quiet victory. Nothing extravagant, but it kept the edges of fear at bay. At the kitchen table, I stacked what we found with deliberate care. The metal clink of cans felt louder than it should have in the silence. Marcus pulled an old camping stove out from a storage bin tucked beside the fridge. The thing was dented and dusty, but when he gave it a try, it sputtered to life. We all watched the little flame, like it was a candle in a storm. The smell of heated beans and rice rose into the air, and with it, a fragile kind of peace. It reminded me of home. Not any particular meal, just the act of being fed, of being warm, even for a moment. Marcus unfolded a map at the table, brushing crumbs and dust aside before spreading it out. The paper crackled as the old creases gave way. We leaned in slowly, heads close, tracing our fingers along roads, rivers and county lines. This map was newer than the others we'd seen, more detailed. Someone had taken care of it once. While the others murmured over possible routes, I stepped to the sink and turned the handle. For a second, nothing happened. Then a weak gurgle, and water, clear cold. I filled each plastic bottle with a kind of reverence, watching the stream as if it might vanish at any second. Before I could register anything, an explosion. It crashed through the morning like thunder. It rolled in through the old windows, threatening to break them. Distant but heavy, like a wave breaking in slow motion. The walls trembled. Window glass hummed. The table shuddered beneath the map. We all froze like a deer in headlights. No one moved. For a heartbeat, even the air seemed still. Then the lights flickered. Once. Again. And died. The quiet that followed was heavier than the blast. No one had to say it. The grid was failing. Maybe already gone. Marcus broke the silence first. His voice was barely above a whisper. That had to have came from town. Ricky stood near the window, his arms wrapped around his chest, his jaw clenched tight. "They're getting closer," he said. "Whoever's behind this, it's not just posturing anymore." Kiori rose slowly from the chair she'd been sitting in, her brows drawn tight. "If the power's gone," she said, "we're on borrowed time." I nodded. My mouth was dry. "We move soon. We can't stay here and wait for the next one." Just then, soft footsteps approached from the hallway. Layla. She looked pale, thinner than yesterday. Her blanket was draped around her shoulders. One arm slung loosely around Geneva's as she guided her in. Her steps were slow, deliberate, but they were hers. She was awake, upright, present. "You should still be resting," Geneva murmured, guiding her toward a chair. Layla shook her head. "I've been resting. Too long. Needed to see what's going on." Her voice was raspy, the edges of fever still clinging to it. But her eyes, those were clear, alert, watching each of us as if she were piecing the world back together from fragments. Marcus pushed a warm bowl of beans and rice across the table toward her. "Eat. Slow." She nodded and took it, hands trembling faintly as she gripped the spoon. Geneva stayed at her side, steadying her water cup when she paused to sip between bites. As Layla ate, the room seemed to settle into a hush again. Not peace, exactly. Something heavier. Something waiting. "So," Layla said, lifting her head, "what's the plan?" I gestured to the map still spread across the table. "We've been talking through routes, trying to figure out which direction's safest." She took another small bite and chewed slowly, swallowed. "What about that mechanic's lot we passed coming in? I remember some of the trucks still had tires. Might be something worth checking." Ricky frowned, scratching the edge of his jaw. "Most probably won't start. Batteries are gone. No way of knowing if there's gas." "But it's something," Layla said quietly. "If even one runs, it gets us further than our feet." Kiori nodded, arms crossed. "Could work. If we stay quiet. Take the back roads." Marcus raised his hand. "I'll go. I can check under the hoods. Used to fix up cars before all this. Might get lucky." Layla looked at each of us, meeting our eyes. Despite the tremble in her fingers, there was a steadiness behind them now. "We can't wait for the next blast. We find fuel. We find something that runs. Then we move." I looked toward the window. The sunlight had stretched higher up the wall now. Brighter, but still thin. Fleeting. I nodded. "All right, we eat. We gather what we can. Then we head for the lot." The rest of breakfast passed in quiet focus. We ate like people with a deadline. When the bowls were cleared and rinsed in the last of the tap water, we moved. I clapped my hands once. Time for Layla's medicine. You guys can check the bedrooms. Closets, drawers. Anything warm? Anything sharp? Geneva nodded. I'll see if there's more medical stuff anywhere. We split up, feet quiet on the creaking floors, shadows long in the morning light. As Layla winced down the thick green medicine, we went to check the house. The silence outside pressed in through the windows like a held breath. In the master bedroom, I stepped into the dust, like I was stepping into someone's memory. A wedding photo hung crooked above a dresser. The edges of its frame were yellowed. I opened drawers slowly, reverently. 2 pairs of thick socks. A wool sweater. I pressed it to my nose. Cedar. The scent was faint, but it reached something in me. I folded it carefully under my arm. In the closet, an old box of blankets. A weathered hunting jacket. The lining was intact, heavy, warm. Jackpot. Across the hall, I heard a muttered curse. Marcus's voice, then the rattle of pill bottles. Found some ibuprofen and allergy meds, he called, his voice echoing faintly through the hallway. Better than nothing, Geneva answered from farther down. The house felt different now, like it had remembered its purpose. Shelter, warmth, safety, however temporary. We gathered what we could. Layla, still pale but determined, moved carefully from room to room with Geneva's steadying hand. She found a pair of boots near the front door, stiff but wearable, and a knit hat that she tugged down over her tangled hair. Ricky rummaged through a hall closet and came out with a small toolbox and a box of batteries. Maybe something in here will work for one of the trucks. We gathered back in the living room, each of us with armfuls of supplies. A rough inventory, 4 bottles of water, 2 flashlights but only one works, a handful of painkillers, a box cutter, the toolbox, a few cans of food, some warm layers, and a pair of warm gloves that Layla immediately claimed. It wasn't much, but it would do. Travel light? I said, helping Marcus zip the gear into 2 old hiking packs. We'll scout, not settle. Kaori adjusted the strap on her shoulder and glanced toward the door. Let's get eyes on the lot before the light shifts. No telling what's moving out there. Layla steadied herself, her voice firm. Let's find our ride. And just like that, we stepped into the cold again, hearts pounding, feet moving, chasing the fragile hope of escape 1 mile at a time. The woods were still damp from the night before, the soil soft beneath our boots, muffling our steps. Twigs snapped occasionally, but we moved in silence, eyes scanning the tree line, nerves taut as wire. A low mist clung to the underbrush, curling around our ankles and hanging in the pockets between pines. Ricky led the way, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes sharp. Kaori was close behind, fingers grazing the edge of her knife sheath every few paces. Layla kept up, slower than the rest, but steady. Her breathing controlled, the knit cap pulled low over her brow. Geneva hovered nearby, one hand always ready to steady her if needed. We followed the overgrown service road until the rusted chain-link fence of the mechanic's lot came into view, twisted and sagging in places. Barbed wire still lined the top, most of it drooping like old sinew. The main gate had buckled inward, one side hanging awkwardly off its hinge. A battered sign swung in the breeze. The painted letters were nearly worn away.
Noland Auto Repair and Towing. We fix it right. First time, every time.
Looks like no one's fixed anything in a long time, Marcus muttered. We slipped through the gap in the fence one by one, careful not to catch our clothes on the rusted wire. The lot beyond was scattered with pickup trucks, sedans, and a few larger vans, most missing tires or windows, their paint blistered under sun and rain. A shallow puddle stretched across the cracked pavement, reflecting the grey sky in trembling ripples. At the far end stood a squat cinder block building, its metal door half shut and streaked with rust. The windows had been boarded from the inside, leaving the interior dark. Ricky tested the handle, then shoved it open with a hollow metallic screech. Inside, the air was thick, old oil, mildew, and dust. It smelled like memory and ruin. We switched on the one working flashlight, its narrow beam cutting a shaky path across the cluttered space. Shadows jumped across tool benches, dented filing cabinets, and a wall-mounted pegboard that had long since been stripped of anything useful. We spread out. "Check the drawers," Ricky said. "Look for keys, anything with a label or tag. Maybe a clipboard with VIN numbers, anything that matches the trucks outside." Layla leaned against the wall, catching her breath, but her eyes scanned the room with focus. Geneva stayed close, offering a sip of water before turning to rifle through a drawer marked service orders. Marcus popped open the filing cabinet with a grunt. "There's stuff here, might be outdated, but..." He flipped through folders, smearing away dust with his thumb. "Here, this one says Dodge Ram, white, new tires, full tank." He looked up. "That ring any bells?" "I saw something like that near the back of the lot," Kaori said. Ricky found a ring of keys hanging behind the counter, partially hidden under a torn calendar from 2027. "They're unmarked," he said, weighing them in his hand. "But if we can match them up..." We gathered what we could. Keys, a set of maps with greasy fingerprints, a siphon hose, a nearly full can of WD-40, and a few faded road flares. Not a gold mine, but enough to matter. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the trees just beyond the fence line. The silence had changed, no longer calm, just waiting. I looked to Layla. She nodded once, determined. "Let's see if one of these old beasts still has a heart," she said. We stepped back into the cold, scattered across the lot, with keys in hand, chasing the sliver of hope that one engine might still breathe. Thank you for listening to Chapter 13 and 14. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Respectfully, let me know what you think. See you later.